Today I'm going to make a Commando Droid. I started with a sheet of EVA foam. I've done a few battle droids before, and the Commando Droid is similar, so I started by creating flat stencils using my battle droids as a reference. The Commando head is shorter and wider, so I took that into account. As I do this, I'm going to keep sharpening my knife to get as clean a cut as possible in the foam, because that's just ideal for gluing stuff together. But because the knife dulls out with each cut, I'm fighting an uphill battle. So inevitably I had to sand some of the edges. More on that later. You know, I actually just tried scalpels for this, like medical scalpels, and they were sharper, so they worked better, but they dulled out even faster, and they don't resharpen very well. Additionally, they're super thin, and twice they just shattered. It's metal, and it shattered under the stress of just pressing on it. And some of those shards hit me in the face. That's not acne, that's super small scalpel shrapnel. I heat form the parts to give them a curve. In some cases, I used pre-existing curved shapes to help me out as I formed the foam. Other times, I just stretched it out with my fingers. I made these section plates the same way. I ever so slowly contact cemented the parts together. This glue gives off poison fumes, so wear a mask and do this in a well-ventilated area. You can also use hot glue, but people are gonna rant in the comments about all of hot glue's problems, so just check that to see why I'm not using it in this particular instance. Actually, so like I alternate between hot glue and contact cement, just depending on how much of a budget there is for the videos and how much stress it's going to be under. And I think in the original Battle Droid video, I was using hot glue, but some of the parts were curved and had so much stress on them that it didn't really work out, so that's why I'm using contact cement for this one. This will take a while because you need to wait 12 to 14 minutes after applying the glue before you can actually join the edges together. So knowing that, the tendency is to do all the edges at once, but that isn't always practical because of the geometry of the part that you're working on. For instance, it'll get stuck together wrong on one end while you're trying to attach another end, so you gotta do each edge one at a time, and inevitably 4 seams turns into an hour of work. On that, I want to take a quick moment to thank my patrons who are currently scrolling by, without whom these videos would not be possible at all. Having said that, I have to break up the videos like this for large builds because a project like this could take 80 hours of work, and between ad revenue and Patreon, there's really only funding for 23 hours of work, and I really don't want to have to take months to put together a tutorial that I know can be accomplished in a couple of weeks. It's just unnecessary. So if you have $1, consider supporting me on Patreon, where you'll get early access, behind the scenes content, and ensure that I can keep making these videos at all. Because honestly, once that 23 hours is up, I have to look for work elsewhere, and not every job that's available to me allows me the freedom to even make these YouTube videos. And on that ominous note, as we get back to the build, I built the back walls of the droid's head, scrap pieces. Stop focusing on the background. There, that's how you get your machines to work. You yell at them. I've also heat formed any area where I might want to paint later, which is why that's sort of reflective. I used thin EVA foam supported by ribs to make the underside of the, I'm just gonna call it a cobra head. I made this retro car grill for the speaker vents, night vision, and I used hole saw offcuts for the details on the back of the head, but there's no reason why you can't just use EVA foam. I'm literally just trying to use up scrap material from previous builds. The debris fields from previous builds are all overlapping in my workshop, making it impossible to move. Cleaning is a necessary step to prop making. I glued those parts on, put a little bit of quick fill on the back there, but I don't really want to use a ton of quick fill on this project, so mostly I'm just trying to make the seams line up with the panel lines that are already on the robot so that I don't have to use any filler material. Like the second you have to use filler material, it means you have to wait a day for it to dry and then do several hours of sanding to get rid of it. That's one reason why I really enjoy mechanical builds as opposed to organic prop builds. When there are visible seams on a prop that I'm replicating, then it saves me time because I don't have to waste 2 days filling and sanding to eliminate a seam. Not to beat a dead horse here, but if I had more patrons, then I could afford to spend more time on eliminating a seam or even build an organic prop, because there are a lot of really cool organic looking props and aliens in the Star Wars universe that I'd like to build. It takes so much more time. What was I? Right, dowels. For the main hinge, I'm using a wooden dowel, which I wrapped in strips of EVA foam. Those are the puzzle piece strips that you tear off of the sides of it. I just cut the puzzle pieces off. I determined where the eyes should go using my Battle Droid templates as a guide. They weren't quite accurate, as you can see, so I moved them and traced them using lids, just lids. And I also cut them out using those lids because they're a little bit sharp. This method doesn't exactly create a clean cut. Normally what I do is I take a copper pipe type that I've sanded the edge, and that works really well. I just didn't have one of the proper diameter for this. So I used my rotary tool to sand that edge. Also sanded that outer strip of foam into a conical shape. Oh, that I did use on the belt sander. See, that's a really good example of the belt sander is good for external positive sanding, whereas an internal negative empty space, it's much easier to use the rotary tool. I mean, you can use a rotary tool on an external bit like that cone. It's just, there's always that possibility that it could zip across the surface and put a big gash in your project. The dowel is the heaviest part of this whole thing, so I added these spikes to help hold it in place. Also added eye bars, sure, yeah. I carefully stabbed this into his brain. That's horrifying to watch the playback. It's like a lobotomy. Get it? A lobotomy? Oh god, kill me now. It's awful. I cut a door in the bottom so that I could get in there when I need to add, electrical stuff later. Then I plasti-dipped it. As it dried, I moved on to the neck. That's obviously a lie. It's sitting right there. Dried overnight. Okay, obviously it would be great if I could do all the parts at once, but when I have to build section by section like this, it helps to paint as I go. Using a broken yardstick to support the neck on the inside, because, there is a lot of weight on here, what with the wooden dowel. Hey, you guys like this camera angle? I think this was like the first thing that I shot with this new camera mount that I bought with patron support. Thanks, patrons! I know it's hard to comprehend, but not having to constantly work around a tripod is a huge time saver. Instead of having to reposition the shot each time, I literally just have to push a button now. Like, I can shoot these videos 3 times faster. That's what Patreon does. It eliminates something that slows me down, makes the videos more comprehensible, because now I'm not obscuring my own build by, sticking my head in the shot and blocking the prop that I'm working on. So yeah, actual visible proof that Patreon is working. Oh, hey, also, since shooting this with the Patreon funds, I got a cutting mat, so it's easier for you guys to see the precise measurements when I'm working on this workbench. I wish I had this a few months ago, because I was getting measurements for somebody's cosplay armor. I was just like, yeah, just climb up there and careful not to sit in any of the chemical stains. Just avoid the WD-40 and battery acid. That's great, Jake. Super professional. Once I had 3 layers of neck, closed it up on the sides and filled in the seams. There were a few other detail parts that I had to make as well. There's quite a bit of trial and error involved in making this droid because it only exists in the cartoon, unlike the battle droid, which we see in a few movies. And in the cartoon, they're very acrobatic. They're jumping all over the place. That's what kind of made them scary and believable that the droid army was an actual threat. But because it's a cartoon and it's animated, when the droid moves in a way that its joints don't allow, if you watch closely, the totally rigid metal plasteel limbs suddenly turn into rubber. So while making this, I had to split the difference between what looks right and what's functional. When the quick seal had dried, I contact cemented a foam band to the top of the neck. I'm holding it in place with toothpicks right there because it has to be coated in a curved shape, but not totally closed until later. You can't coat this after it's attached, otherwise it'll gum up the sort of hinge and you won't be able to position the head differently. So I'm trying to build this sort of as a massive marionette that I can move around with green screen rods later, but I'm also trying to learn from the mistakes of the previous droid, which was not quite as mobile as I would have liked. I plasti-dipped it up, then painted it and weathered it. Since the thing is supposed to be gray, I almost could have gotten away with not painting it, but I used bits of wood and bits of black foam, and I drew on it. Although they do make gray plasti-dips, so that could save a step right there. But then that comes back to the money thing. I had to use the plasti-dip that I had. I should just make a tutorial and then re-release that same tutorial with like a budget analysis, just so that you can understand why these videos cost so much. Oh yeah, that'd be entertaining for my whole audience of prop making accountants. God, that's a horrible idea. So my actual point is, there are many different ways to build the same prop. This is one way. Hopefully it's helpful, but use whatever works for you. I also lit the eyes using a flashlight, tap light. I used a tap light, reflectors, and diffusion paper, which is just thin paper. I joined the head to the neck. That's how you make a Commando Droid head, so you can recreate the scene where we see them for the first time. Was it the first appearance of the Commando Droid? Someone will let me know. Be sure to subscribe to see how to make the rest of the droid in part 2, and let's be honest, 3, maybe 4. Not 5 though, because they use the same blasters as the battle droids. And I already did a battle droid blaster build. There'll probably be a few different tutorials in between because it's the Halloween season right now, and I really should be posting some Halloween related stuff. Alright, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. As always, support me on Patreon if you can. And let me know what your favorite Star Wars droid is in comments below. Later.